So that speaks to one of the challenges that archaeologists provide to this idea, is that there is a lot of evidence of humans in the Ice Age, and they appear to be all hunter-gatherers. But like you said, only a small percent of areas where humans have lived have been studied by archaeologists.
That's right. Very tiny percent. And even a tiny percent of every archaeological site has been studied by archaeologists too. Typically 1 to 5% of any archaeological site is excavated.
I mean, that's why Göbekli Tepe fills my mind with imagination, especially seeing it as a time capsule. You know, it's almost certain that there is places on Earth we haven't discovered that once we do, even if it's after the Ice Age, will change our view of human history.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a place, like what would be your dream thing to discover, like Göbekli Tepe, that says a definitive like perturbation to our understanding of Ice Age history?
Some kind of archive, some kind of hall of records. There's both mystical associations with the hall of records at Giza from people like the Edgar Cayce organization. There's also ancient Egyptian traditions which suggest that something was concealed beneath the Sphinx. This is not an idea that is alien to ancient Egypt. It's quite present in ancient Egypt. So far as I know, nobody has dug down beneath the Sphinx. And of course, there's very good reasons for that. You don't want to damage the place too much. But let's call it the Hall of Records. I'd love to find that. But I think in a way, that's what Göbekli Tepe is. Göbekli Tepe is a hall of records. You know, it's interesting that just as I've tried to outline, I hope reasonably clearly, that the 3 great pyramids of Giza match Orion's belt in 10,500 BC, just as the Sphinx matches Leo in 10,500 BC, 12,500 years ago or so. Pillar 43 in Enclosure D at Göbekli Tepe contains what a number of researchers, myself included, regard as an astronomical diagram. Martin Sweatman of Edinburgh University is brought forward the best work in this field, but it was initially started by a gentleman called Paul Burley, who noticed that one of the figures on Pillar 43 is a scorpion, very much like we represent the constellation of Scorpio today, and that above it is a vulture with outstretched wings, which is in a posture very similar to the constellation that we call Sagittarius. And on that outstretched wing is a circular object. And the suggestion is that it's marking the time when the sun was at the center of the dark rift in the Milky Way at the summer solstice 12,500 years ago. That's what it's marking. And it's interesting that the same date can be deduced from Pillar 40. Of course, it's controversial. Martin Sweatman's ideas are by no means accepted by archaeology, but he's done very, very thorough, detailed statistical work on this, and I'm personally convinced. So we have a time capsule at Göbekli Tepe, which is memorializing a date that is at least 1,200 years before Göbekli Tepe was built. If that dating of 11,600 years ago proves to be absolutely the oldest date, as it is at present. The date memorialized on Pillar 43 is 12,800 years ago, the beginning of the Younger Dryas, the beginning of the impact event. And then Giza does the same thing, but in much larger scale. It uses massive megalithic architecture, which is very difficult to destroy, and a profound knowledge of astronomy to encode a date in a language that any culture which is sufficiently literate in astronomy will be able to decode. We don't have to have a script that we can't read, like we do with the Indus Valley civilization or with the Easter Island script. We don't have to have a script that can't be interpreted. If you use astronomical language, then any astronomical literate civilization will be able to give you a date. The Hoover Dam has a star map built into it, and that star map is part of an exhibition that was put there at the founding of the Hoover Dam. And what it does is it freezes the sky above the Hoover Dam at the moment of its completion. And Oscar Hansen, the artist who created that piece, said so specifically that this would be so that any future culture would be able to know the time of the dam's construction. So you can use astronomy and architecture to memorialize a particular date.